Here's a bunch of Cuba questions. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Brandy Kenna says, what are the most interesting Cuban timings you like to work in? Mark A. Anzalone Sr. says, do some Cuban rhythms have a dual rhythm at the same time? And Buddy Yearling says, Cuban influence, crossover between Prez Prado and Fess. I hear both influencing your playing. Greeting from Fort Collins, Colorado. We hope you come back.
All right, well, there's a lot of good questions there. And this is one of my favorite things that I've been checking out for the last 20-odd years, really. This is the first time I went down to Cuba. So are there two rhythms at work? There are so many different rhythms at work. It depends how complicated you want to get into your thinking about it. But generally in Cuban music, musicians pay attention to the clave. That sort of dictates where they leave space and where they play. But there are very few real strict rules, and a lot of even experts disagree on some the finer points of clave in Cuban music. But the similarity between Prado and Fess, well, I think before even Prado and Fess, there is something that comes out of old boogie playing, and Junkers blues, where New Orleans piano players will voice a chord with the 5 at either extreme. It's just a basic triad, but they stick the 5. The chord is wrapped either side with what musicians call the 5 note of the chord, and that one's actually quite an aggressive note. It's not this one. You expect it to be this one, but it's not. And it lends itself then to things like thumb can almost act as a counterpoint. But you get so used to using this shape when playing New Orleans R&B. But one of the things I got interested in early on going to Cuba was the fact that they voiced a lot of their chords like this too. And when you take a chord, you can arpeggiate it, you can break it up into its consistent elements and play them in order, or you can mess with it. And I really like that style, and where that I love all that stuff. That's what really kind of drew me to Cuba. But when I got to Cuba and went to Santiago, which is like the New Orleans of Cuba, an instrument that interested me was the tres, because in Santiago people usually play out in the street. Well, there's quite often not a piano there, and the piano doesn't really feature in the old music from there, which is called son. But something about Cuba inspired me to dig up my old tres and put some strings on it. So this is a Cuban tres, and I'll show you because it's kind of hip. Except I can't find my bloody pick now.
There's one over there. Oh, see it?
Oh, hold on. Can you get it for me? Because I'm all strapped in.
Yes.
All right.
In front of the camera.
Let me see how we're going to do this. So what's interesting is in the music I heard in Santiago that I really liked, this was the instrument that was playing those parts. And this is called a Cuban tres. And it's really interesting because of the way it's strung. It only exists in Cuba, this instrument. And I bought this from a little old lady whose husband had been a tresero and who had died. And so I picked this up and learned how to play something on it, at least anyway. The tuning's unusual. It goes like this. and get a bit more comfortable. So when you play it, this string here is tuned in octaves, and this string here is tuned in octaves, which is the same thing as going. So when you go, it's like. So I think really what's interesting historically, and as I say, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but this instrument, by playing arpeggiated chords and defining the chord progressions in the early bands from Santiago, was replaced when the music became popular in Havana, went into the big auditoriums and dance halls where a piano assumed that role, and that's really where that style comes from, of that. So there's a little diversion about Professor Longhair, Pres Prado, Cuban Tres Arpeggios. This is a lovely instrument. My favourite player is Arsenio Rodriguez. He would play these lovely melancholy things. Because of the way it's strung, There's a sort of Middle Eastern quality to it too, I like. There you have the Cuban Trez.
Don't put it away yet.
Oh, don't put it away yet.
Tom
No question.
Dewar says, could you do Iko Iko on the Trez?
Yeah. Well, now, my spot boy and your spot boy sitting on the bayou. Oh, my spot boy to your spot boy, I'm gonna set your tail on fire. Talking about hey now, Iko Iko one day. Giacomo fino hanande, Giacomo finane. My spot boy and your spot boy sitting on the bayou. My spot boy till your spot boy gonna set your tail on fire. Talking about hey now, Iko Iko one day. With Giacomo fino hanande, Giacomo finane. Iko Iko one day. Oh, Giacomo fino hanande, Giacomo finane. A shorter version of Iko. Right, Trez is going to bed.